Welcome back to the NASB MetaWatch. My name is JD, and I'm here with Zach, aka Subtle. How you doing, man?
Doing well, man. How about yourself?
I am chilling. Uh, just got engaged this weekend. No big deal.
Yeah, congrats.
Just pushed past that, so I wasn't able to watch too much of SmashCon live, sadly. But I was able to catch up. And
Mm-hmm.
dude, I've been looking forward to this. What a fast-paced intro, week two and a half, or whatever, of a brand new game. I mean, what are your just overall vibes right now?
Yeah, I'm feeling really positive about the game. It was nice getting an actual land tournament full of results, which we'll get into, and also obviously touch on the new patch and stuff, which we kind of anticipated. I think last week, thinking we might get one here early in the week, and we got a pretty juicy one. So we'll dive into it.
Yeah, and so we'll just start with the tournament, which was pre-patch, post-fix, which apparently the switch they ran on. So they were two patches almost behind from where we are now. Topic for later. We'll talk about that. But they, worked around some of the the things that were patched out. The Infinites, Mikey and Sandy. Mikey was banned, so his Infinite was not a problem at all. But they made it work, and we had a top 8 with 8 different characters. I'll just run it down real quick. We had Pink taking first with Aang, and in second, I just have here Mirror. That's a Mirror Man, of course, on
Yeah.
SpongeBob. Pancake Mix on the Oblina with taking third. Sea Falcon, Cody Falcon, taking fourth with Reptar. Then we have Kirby Kid and Mars split in fifth, with Ren and Stimpy on Kirby Kid and Mars on April. And then DeBuzz and Barking Frog taking seventh. DeBuzz on Zim, Barking Frog on Danny Phantom. Some surprises, some things we kind of anticipated, but what are your thoughts on the top 8 characters, players, anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think I kind of noted to myself when I was watching with some friends and stuff, as we were kind of going through the bracket from day 1 into day 2, and I think Pink stood out right away. Even in his pools matches, he was destroying. I mean, he had an Aang Ditto against the other top seed in his pool. I forget who it was, but he was just fully in control pretty much the entire bracket. And I think that Mirror Man might have been the first Game 5 set he played. I'd have to look back in his bracket, but he was just on a tear, and his punish game was just so far above everybody else's that I kind of anticipated that he'd be in top 8 for sure. But yeah, I mean, Mirror Man, the grand finals and stuff was great. The other top 8, it was nice seeing the diversity for sure. I'm not sure exactly how much that came because of Michelangelo being banned. I know that in particular, Pancake Mix was a Michelangelo player who had to switch off of, and I think that his run was particularly impressive considering the small amount of time that he had to just completely learn a new main. Not only to find a new main that he wanted to play, but to bring that character up to speed. And for him to still get third in the first LAN tournament was really impressive.
Yeah, I mean, if that's not a show of general fundamentals and skill, I don't know what is. Picking a last second main and placing third is wild.
Yeah, and I think to his credit, he was getting a lot of people. It's online, it's the internet, so it is what it is. Of people just kind of giving him hate, you're carried by Michelangelo, and he was very insistent leading up to the event, no, you don't understand. I can play other characters. I'm just I'm good at the game, because he had gotten top 8 at the juice box and stuff right before SmashCon, and people, he was kind of lumped in with every Michelangelo player, and people were saying that everyone's carried by this character, and I think that he clearly proved otherwise. And he got better, I think, with Alblina as the bracket moved on, which was really impressive.
Oh yeah, I mean, let's not mix around what these players are doing. They are, I hate to use the term chasing the meta, but they're following the meta. And so if you're playing for money and your time, our time is valuable, it's not like we're going to a friend's house and picking our best character and just slaughtering. Sure, your friends, if you're having a few beers and he's just, chaining you with Michelangelo. Give that person crap. But I have no patience for people who can't see that the character's available. It will win you money, and you are one of the few players that could execute. Do it up, and then let's talk a little bit about the Mikey Ban, because me and you are on different sides of this, which is already I'm so happy about, because we don't you don't want homogenized takes early on in a podcast. I want to hear the different sides. So I'll start with my take, which is a little wishy-washy. I was really not completely sold on the ban right away, and I will say that it really sucks for people who were practicing this character, and then it was just so soon before the event, taken away as a viable pick, or a pick at all. That's awful. Some people could use the money, and the trip's expensive. There's a lot of factors. On the other hand, this was an event where you had to be signed up before the game was announced. So there weren't any Mikey mains signing up saying, I'm a Mikey main, I'm going to this tournament, and then clicking registration. It was after the fact, which I think is a data point here. I think that does that is relevant. And I mean, this is results-based thinking, but I don't think we would have seen such a wide range of characters in top 8 had Mikey been available. I think there's definitely a good chance that we get 2, maybe even 3 Mikeys, and it wouldn't be great for a fresh game to have the first LAN tournament have Mikey Dittos first and second. Not saying there's a good chance of that. Maybe a 15-20% chance max that could have happened. These are all little factors that weighed in. I think the last thing for me is that I don't think you are a highly critical person. I think you are, when you disagree with me, and I'm going to give you the floor for as much time as you want here. So
yeah.
But I'm thinking, man, being in that person's shoes, and you have to make that decision. Nintendo is someone who I know he announced, and I know he's one of the main TOs. Who knows if he's the unilateral executive, or what number of people went into the decision. He's definitely the one who was the face of it. It must be hard to be in that position, to have to choose to ban a character with so little time left. But I think I do lean towards it being okay he was banned. But I'd love to hear you kind of express your thoughts over voice instead of just Twitter DMs like we've been doing.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of tweeted out a little bit of my opinion that I didn't like the ban, particularly that it was, well, really for 2 reasons, right? One, that we were so close to SmashCon. It was announced, I believe, like late Wednesday that this was the decision. So you basically had Wednesday evening, and then you had Thursday, which was a day probably going to be for travel for a lot of people. And then Friday was bracket. And so it was just not a lot of time for people to learn a new character. And especially, the second point is that the game's really new. And so that leads to kind of 2 problems, right? One is that we're making decisions really, really early in a game's life cycle. And so I think it's a little bit preemptive. But also, you don't have people with enough time in the game to have a lot of different characters that are all up to speed. So I think it's even harder to have practice secondaries and stuff when we're a week into the game being released, where a lot of people probably tried to put their time into a main, get really good with that character and stuff in anticipation of brackets and such. We kind of talked about pancake mix. I heard from a number of players, like I was mentioning earlier, we're not even sold, I don't think, on the fact that Michelangelo was definitely the best character, right? We still had people who had differing opinions that, is Michelangelo one of the best characters, pre this patch, leading into SmashCon? Certainly. I don't think anyone would have probably taken him out of the top 3 characters at worst. I think the other main contenders were probably Aang and Lucy, right? Those were the characters I think that were most often brought up as they might still be better than Michelangelo even with his combo. And my feeling was that a lot of people just found him boring, right? We had people trying to be like, oh well, on the Switch they don't have the bug fix, so his shell infinite stall is still in the game, so they had to ban it.
Weird.
It's like,
Those were always the weird takes, in my opinion.
yeah, and it's like we had tournaments and stuff where we ran it and it just banned that stalling mechanic. We had, and even for this tournament, we still had the jab lock infinite as a bug in the game because of missed hex being bugged. And that was banned. So it's not like we couldn't just ban the infinite with his, the infinite stall with his down B special, like with his down special, the shell. So he was pretty much banned because of the nair combo string, right? The up throw, nair, nair, up throw, nair, nair. And people talking about like how that's like an infinite combo. It was a 0 to death combo. It wasn't an infinite. You couldn't get it wasn't the equivalent of wobbling, right, in Melee, where you could actually do it up, forever until you decided to end the combo. The combo didn't even work after you got to a certain percent. It was that it was really effective at low percent. It was pretty easy to pull off, and you would get stocks. It was easy to pull off on pretty much everyone in the cast. It worked virtually the same. And so it was just easier to pull off than some of the more technical high APM combos that you see from like Aang or SpongeBob, right? The nair type of combos where you kind of just carry them across the stage into like the light dares. And so there was a lot of backlash. There was a lot of people putting pressure in his chat for HBox leading into his Juicebox event, saying, Nair's really boring, Michelangelo's really lame, ban him, and it just leads me into like this sort of gray area, and I don't like the precedent that's set that we can just decide to ban a character super early in the meta when we're just following the trends really early. Maybe that version of Michelangelo isn't even overpowered. We really don't know. We didn't let this play out for very long. And we talked about this last week. Michelangelo, a few days into the game's release, people were like, mid-tier, low tier. Then people discovered the combo, and all of a sudden he's broken. And then a couple days later, he's banned. And it just felt like a very, very fast-moving development for a new game. And it felt like it was more backlash to how people felt about the character's combos rather than the strength of the character. And that's a little bit concerning for me. A lot of people didn't we'll get into some of the other results. People aren't necessarily the hugest fan of like DeBuzz's Zim, for example, just kind of throwing out a lot of projectiles and walling people out. If he starts getting really good results and other people mimic his playstyle and get good results, are all of a sudden we starting to consider banning Zim? Like I just don't like where that leads, and I hope that we're a little bit more measured as a community and like from the TO's perspective about how we react to the situations with characters and how people feel about them and such.
Absolutely. And I think I have faith in that TO team. Most TO teams I do have faith in. I'm going to give a particular credit to the due diligence that they did. I don't believe Nintendo is one to kind of succumb to pressure from Twitch, from spectators mostly. I think this is a unique case where, there was very little time to deliberate or debate this decision because it was discovered and then there was a weekend and it could have been out sooner. It should have been out sooner. I think, as you said, the Wednesday and then the Thursday, it should have been Monday. And that would have been, I think, a bit different. People had a week and a half to learn Mikey. Now you have 5 days to learn a different character. That's a lot more, we're talking on the margins I hear, but what I mostly hear from you is exactly what I agree with the most, which is let's really be careful with character bans. Let's make sure that we are doing it for very, very, very extreme cases. And this felt more like an amalgamation of a ton of different issues. Perhaps the developers, or they got in touch with the developers and they banned it because it's against the developer's intent, or it was something that maybe not was a bug, but it was an oversight. Oh man, that we did not want any character to ever have a combo like that. Okay, perhaps that's part of the equation here. There are a lot of factors that came in. So and like you said, people were trying to be like, oh, he's banned because he has an infinite stall. It's like, so does Toph. Like, what are we doing here? Like, that makes no sense. You know what I mean? So I think it was very frustrating to see. Oh, your light went straight out, my son. There it is.
Yeah.
All good.
Yeah, my computer monitors just dipped for a sec, but I'm good.
All good. All good. I just wanted to see your pretty face. I do think that there is a general maturity to the TOs, at least. I think most of the people coming from, I know Melee. I can only speak to the Melee TOs, but they do deserve a lot of respect across the board, and I hope this is the case, that they took it very seriously, and this was not just some, Michelangelo's boring. It must have been a little more thought out than that. I wish they gave a little bit of a follow-up. Maybe we could get Nintendo on to talk about the decision at some point. That would be pretty cool. Let's get some clout for that first. But I do think that taking a step back, I'm really happy we have different opinions on this. It was really cool kind of hearing you out. One of my big things was like, oh, look at that tournament that just happened, the HBox tournament. That it was Mikey's were in top 3, and then you were like, okay, but those were all top Slap City players,
right?
And that really made me, okay, this is a lot more nuanced than I thought, and there's a good chance that other people didn't know that either, which might have been, the general opinion was like, oh, Mikey's dominating, and it's like, Slap City's dominating. Because
it's like it's hard to separate it, right? If you have the players and the character, and what you ended up having was really, really good players playing really, really good character, and it's hard to know exactly how much their results were because of the player and how much was character. It's going to be a combination, obviously, but how that's divvied up between the two halves is hard. But just to kind of go off of your point, I don't think that the results of the Mikey ban were a bad thing for SmashCon. Like you said earlier, we had 8 different characters for the top 8 spots, which is really, really nice character diversity. It made the weekend very, very interesting. I'm just trying to be less results oriented, and I don't want to see. I don't want the game to become where we're banning characters regularly until a new patch comes out, and then we jump to another character. I don't know that that's necessarily even going to happen or anything, but it's just a concern of how quickly the ban came about that left me a little bit worried. But
totally agree with where we're at. I really do think that this was an odd occurrence, and hopefully the only time a character has to be banned for a major 3 days before. Let's cross our fingers there. I do want to talk a bit about the patch. Probably a lot about the patch, because this is the biggest patch. I'll just say this: I've been gaming for a minute. I've had patch notes in my time since active patches go live and there's a game. This is one of the biggest gameplay changing, defining patches I've ever seen. That's not like a full-on expansion or tons of new content. You know what I mean? This is the biggest balance patch I've seen, I should say. At least in recent memory, because here are the two big ones. DI, which called it. Just putting that out there. Watch episode 1. We talked about that. So DI went from looks like a 10 degrees to 16 degrees global DI window. Which we actually will have a guest on soon that could give us some insight into some of these words. And then dash dancing. As well as a long list of fixes. Michelangelo, as we talked about before, that got patched out right away. And Aang, I think, is another big one, just because we've seen those nairs connect when there's some air bending going on, let's put it that way. Some nair bending, But yeah, DI is huge. Every single hit now has to be reevaluated. What are your just first thoughts on everything that's going on? This just released last night. We're working boys. We don't have time to get immediately into the lab and figure everything out. But I've been watching. I know you've been watching. What's going on, man?
Yeah, I mean, I got a little bit of time in like the practice, in the training mode, just to kind of to look at some of the hitboxes and just kind of test out the dash dance movement. The DI change, I think, is for me a little bit to be determined on just how much impact it has. It's clearly a step in the right direction. I think improving the amount of like the angle at which you can DI to get out of combos and stuff is really, really good. That should hopefully help against a lot of the nair strings and stuff that you see from like Aang and SpongeBob and characters and such. It might even help with some of the light down air strings a little bit, where people can DI out, and it's not, you have to reposition if you want to hit them with multiple down airs. So that could address multiple issues at once. But then on the flip side is, right, how does that affect the tier list? How does that affect different characters' strengths who might have relied on that, and now do they become more characters that have a lot of like stray hits and they have to string a lot of small punish neutral exchanges together, and characters that maybe didn't have as devastating a combo game, what happens to their combo game, right? Like for me as like a Helga player, she has really strong combos, but not the crazy 0 to death strings where you can carry someone across, like harmonic from one end to the other with nairs, and then you just dare them off a few times. So does that like strip characters who are already a little bit lacking compared to the rest of the cast of a combo game entirely? We'll have to play against, I think, more players who have good DI, see that played in more top level matches and stuff in tournaments, and it'll be interesting to see if we start seeing other trends with different characters. But a lot of the bug fixes too, right? We have which kind of lead to some switches in potentially the meta, with like Abelina's light down air lasting, I think it was like 18 frames or something, or 16, something like that, and now it's 3. So it doesn't just stay out there forever. You have like Zim had a completely disassociated hitbox on his strong neutral on the ground, and now that's back in the right place. As a Helga player, again, the counter being fixed, so now you actually don't take damage when you successfully counter a move. That's really nice. And then also they kind of just tone down some of the like insta kill moves, right? Ren and Stimpy's down special. They decrease kind of across the board for Ren and Stimpy. Lucy's down special with the jump scare, and there was one other character. Danny's down special. They reduced the like base knockback, but helped with the growth. So now those shouldn't really kill at 0, but they can be more of like finisher moves at like they could get you early stocks at like mid%, but not quite at 0 like some of them were doing, particularly the jump scare. So I think that helps balance things out, makes things a little bit less randomized and volatile with stocks where you have to earn it a little bit more. And then toning down Aang's Nair a little bit, removing the like outermost hitbox on the Nair so it reaches just a little bit less far, in addition to the DI helping, hopefully. So, and then I guess the last thing I'll just touch on, and then you can kind of talk about it, is just the dash dancing. I messed around with it a little bit. It feels like, to compare it to Melee, that the like foxtrotting style of dash dancing will be a lot more effective than the quick small range dash dancing. A lot of characters just don't have like great ground speed. So I wonder if that gets touched at all, where it's a little bit more fast-paced ground movement. Because right now, like playing even with like Helga, or I've been messing around with Danny and stuff, they just don't run that fast, and so they don't cover a lot of distance. And I'm not sure how much characters like that will utilize dash dancing compared to like when I moved around with Aang a little bit. I was like, oh, he can really utilize dash dancing very well, and he's already a strong character. So I wonder if they buff the ground speeds of some other characters so that way they can keep up in the meta if dash dancing really turns into like a primary neutral movement strategy. But I'll get your thoughts too.
Yeah, I was saying before it was good that we had different takes on the ban. I'm trying to find a part that you mentioned that I didn't completely agree with. Going backwards, I think the dash dancing, right. When I was thinking of this being a revolutionary patch, dash dancing is less important now than, one, it's going to be developed. Like, we're going to see its impact. It takes time. A completely different movement option, you don't know day one. You never will. I do think that they implemented it right. They don't have that 15 frame warm up before a dash attack does not make dash dancing this insane, like you could turn around and then just do a dash attack, because dash attacks are quite strong. That seems very fair. Ties into a little bit of, you're saying, the fox trotting being the kind of method. That makes a lot of sense to me, and we'll see how that warms up, that pans out. Right. And also ground movement. Most characters are pretty slow on the ground. The no jump squat being kind of the big headline to this game, that you just jump all you want and then attack and then air dash down. That's probably going to keep aerials a huge part of the game, but it's a really good step to have these nair planes be a little less insane, to make a little more fair, and even SpongeBob has to be a little more creative with his combos as well. So I do think that the DI, it's, I guess you could call it a 60% increase to DI. I mean, probably not, that's not correct math, but it's a big increase from 10 to 16. That's noticeable. You notice it immediately. And I think, I'm going to kind of go off a little bit of what Mango was talking about, a little bit of what IBDW was talking about. I spent a lot of time in their VODs today, kind of soaking up their opinions and their gameplay. Basically, it makes the game less just a button fest. You don't just get your attacks out frame one and things chain. They really have to be a little more creative, and you have to have DI mix up. And I think the big thing is that, global DI is like, oh, it's good for defense. If you DI wrong, you're DIing that much more wrong. Let's put it that way. So if you are DIing down or out or whatever, melee players know the difference between combo DI and survival DI, but just to reiterate, like survival DI, if you're trying to get out of those combos and then someone hits you with a strong, that's a lot more in play now. It's that much better. And so I'm going to go in the direction of, I think this will benefit characters like Sandy, characters like Helga, with some really strong strongs. The parts of their kit that really shine are those strong hits. I do think that they could use a little buff to movement, and they had trouble chaining their light nairs together before, but I truly don't think that's going to be important for them once they get lapped out a bit more and all that stuff. I'll take a step back. A lot of work is going to be put into this patch. I think I have a lot of faith in the devs to. I said this to you off mic, but they can't be just dishing these types of changes out willy-nilly. This is a big change, and it's being warmly received. All the chatter is saying this is a banger of a patch, and it's really agreeable that they're saying, like, all right, play with this. We'll make more changes. We'll keep an eye out. Like, the game's not done, but we can't make more changes till you give us feedback. Everybody loves that. And so, it's just, we're going to be putting time into this. We're going to be putting time into our characters now and seeing how everything works out with the new DI, and seeing if dash dancing is even viable, mixing in the wave dashes that they have, the air dashes, the strafing, and all that stuff. Really, there's a lot of labbing that's going to come out of this. And, this game's moving so fast that in 3 days, this podcast is going to be obsolete. But I think the last thing I want to say on the patch is, anyone listening to this, disregard every tier list you've seen up to this point. Like, every single one. You have to. Like, sure, Patrick might still be lower than other characters, but let's be real. This is a huge fundamental change to the game, and we don't know what's going to happen. If you're trying to pick a character based on who's doing well, who won this past weekend, who's getting the high tier list across, just disregard. This is day zero. And frankly, just pick a character that you kind of like. We're a Sandy main and a Helga main over here. We're not exactly chasing the meta, but we're picking characters that have playstyles that we like. DeBuzz is a great example of that. Zim was literally broken in this big tournament he played, but it is the only character that fits him to a T. Zim is the most DeBuzz character that has ever. He's more DeBuzz than DeBuzz. And so he came in and he made it work. And, this actually ties in a little bit to what I was going to mention before, but there were a few games that really stood out to me going over the VODs. DeBuzz versus Dimension. Check out that set. It's long. I think it's half an hour.
There were 2 timeouts, I think, of the 5 games, if I'm not mistaken.
I think there was at least one. I think there was one that was... There were 2. No, there were 2. There were 2. Okay. You're right. There was one that wasn't as close and then one that was pretty close. I'll leave it at that. It was pretty close. But that's the, not the most relevant tie-in to what I was talking about, but he wasn't picking the top character. He made it work. He got top 8, playing someone that most people would write off as being terrible and broken and yada, yada, yada. Bottom line, tier lists are garbage right now. Don't listen to any of them until, Thursday. Thursday is going to be the first where if it's someone heavy into labbing, if it's like literally Leffen, I might give it a shot. Otherwise, weekend and beyond, this game has completely flipped, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be a lot of changes across the board in how characters just play out. And, that's the other part too, which is kind of, tying back to some of the stuff we were talking about earlier. We're so early in the game that, like, we don't even have matchups. Like, we haven't even defined how matchups play out. Like, forget, like, just where the tier list is. Like, even in other Smash games, like, there are lower tier characters who can beat characters who are generally considered higher tier, and we haven't even evolved our meta to understanding the nuances of, like, every matchup for a character, let alone even understanding general aspects of the character. And now all of the characters essentially got, like, a massive update with this DI change. Obviously Mikey getting, I don't even know if we really dove into, like, his Nair changes. It kind of, like, pops you up and in front of him a little bit, so it's more like a juggling move rather than, like, kind of setting you down at that angle.
Still gonna be combos, by the way. That's still gonna be a pretty good Nair.
Yeah, I messed around with it a little bit in training. There's actually I found you can do up throw into his light down air, and if you kind of do the light down air on the way up, you only get the second hit. And if you mess around with it in training, you'll see what I'm talking about. It looks pretty much exactly like his old Nair, and you can kind of regrab it or, like, up tilt into doing just the second hit of his light down air, and it kind of still exists. His Nair felt like a really good combo tool on top of it. A lot of the talk around Mikey, I heard from a lot of, like, prominent players, was like, Michelangelo's Nair is a problem right now, but once they nerf it, they're going to really have to overhaul the character. A lot of his other, tools, his general toolkit is a little bit lacking outside of that move. I think he still has a lot of strong aspects, a lot of good combo game. His tether's really difficult to deal with. His, like, pizza projectile, actually pretty underrated, especially that, like, on hit it sends the one slice of the pizza back, so it still kind of, like, hovers in the middle of the stage. I think he still has a lot of stuff, and I think people are gonna, I think it's only natural people are gonna try to gravitate toward trends if they see other top players playing characters and talking them up. They're gonna be like, oh, these are the good characters, these are the top tiers, I should gravitate toward them. But I think we're gonna have a lot of players that go in that direction, and there's gonna be some characters that get a little bit left behind in the meta that might be better than we think they are currently as a community, because they're just underexplored, I think, is what's going to end up happening naturally. And, a few weeks, a few months from now, those characters might kind of emerge where we're writing them off right now.
Yeah, I love all that. I want to kind of pivot a little bit to another topic that we brought up. There was another, not quite a tournament. There was a crew battle with a bunch of money, I think $20,000 to the winners. It was the Ludwig crew battle. And I want to just give it a quick review. It's not anything that we're going to spend a lot of time with. It was more, I would say a fun event, but with that much money, it's kind of hard to ignore. You know, that's the Ludwig way. You can't ignore the shit he's doing because it has the most zeros. But I do want to go over a few points. One, spoiler, Melee won. They won by a player and a half for 10 versus 10 crew battle. So, you know, not a blowout by any means, but definitely a strong win. You know, let's put it this way. So it's 40 stocks to 40 stocks. They won 6-0, right? So competitive, close. And there were a few stars that kind of arose. S2J led off for Team Melee, and look, I'm gonna give you a dirty 30 on this. Not trying to harp again, but S2J came out, beat 2.5 players, beat MK Leo's Leo with S2J's Leo, which is impressive, I have to say. 3 stocked Larry Lur Sandy, took 2 stocks off of Esam's Oblina. Then Wizrobe came in with Aang, did incredibly well, beat 3 people. 3 people. Plups Reptar came in and beat another 3. And then Dabuz and Void for the Ultimate team had really strong performances as well. Dabuz actually delivering the only 4 stock, to my knowledge, beating our boy SFAT. SFAT being the only player on both teams not to take a single stock. Look, that's the funniest thing I've ever seen. Let's just leave it at that. SFAT is the overpowered punching bag, like one of the strongest Melee players to ever live, and just finds his way into the butt of jokes miraculously. It's a gift. I don't know how he does it, but and then Void making it really close, beating Mango, losing only 2 stocks, beating Magi, only losing 1 stock, beating Zane. Looks like another. Actually, that is a 4 stock to my eyes. Beating Zane 4 stocks to nothing. So, look, this is everyone's secondary game, right? To my knowledge, no one has quit their. No Smash top player has quit yet. Who knows? To play NASB, full time. But there has been a very unique situation where, let's call them the new Smash players and the Melee players are both showing, you got to put the barometer up, but pretty equal in terms of warmth towards the game. I haven't seen it cut one way or the other in terms of excitement, right? And I really wanted to open this up. First, thoughts on the crew battle, if you care to share those. But then I want to ask you about how you feel. We talked about a little bit last week, but how you feel about the Melee players coming in and the Ultimate players coming in. Just those 2 scenes, where the differences at, similarities, etc. So first, crew battle. What are you thinking?
Yeah, so I don't think anyone is overly surprised by, like Dabuz and Void holding it down and turning the crew battle into something respectable is not really a surprise. They're both probably 2 of the already best Nick All-Stars players. Yeah, Dabuz has gotten a couple of top 8s already now between like the Juice Box and SmashCon. And Void obviously is I think considered by a lot of people still like the best player in the game, and I think he took the most stocks in the crew battle with 14. There's a couple of things though that we haven't really seen, right? We've seen Plup enter some brackets and he's done pretty well in some of the online events, but I've seen pretty much nothing from S2J or Wizrobe in like an extended bracket. They haven't really entered events yet, and they both took double-digit stocks in the crew battle. I'd love to see some of these players enter a little bit more consistently. And something also I saw people point out, right? Moki kind of gets a little bit lost in the shuffle. He played Lucy, of like, he took 2 stocks, right? Like, what makes him stand out above anyone else? Mango took 2 stocks. Aaron and Leo both took 2 stocks and stuff for the Team Ultimate. But Moki took 2 Dabuz stocks. That was the only person I think he got a chance to play. And it's like, those are more valuable stocks to take than, some of these less established players. Dabuz is, like I said, already established himself as one of the better Nick All-Stars players. And I think for Moki, who's been pretty much, absent from a lot of the brackets, we haven't really seen him enter. For him to take 2 stocks off the buzz is significant. Like that's a respectable showing against one of the best players in a weird matchup too, right? I'm sure that he doesn't even have that much matchup experience against the Zim. So I think that that's something to keep an eye on if he decides to keep up with it. And Mango taking 2 stocks off Void, I think as well, is very notable. Mango also hasn't really been entering stuff with his SpongeBob, but he's been playing a lot. So I'd like to see them enter stuff more. As far as like the melee versus ultimate discussion, it's hard because I think it's in brackets, we've seen a little bit more leaning toward ultimate, right? Like even the I guess melee players that you've seen enter, like even Plup is someone who I think prioritizes melee, but has had a lot of success playing other Smash games and stuff in the past. He's entered, he's played PM and was a really good player. Played Smash 4, has played Ultimate and stuff. I think he's done like the Smash Masters event at past Smash Cons before, and is just a really really good all around player. Wizrobe, I guess, kind of similar, right? Like he's also someone who plays a lot of different Smash games. Even if he's more generally associated with melee. It's gonna be, I think, it's gonna look a little bit like early leaning toward ultimate, particularly because of SmashCon. But if you look at like SmashCon's entrance, there were a lot of like elite ultimate players in attendance. That tier of player wasn't quite in attendance for melee, and I think that that's probably why the general like melee population in that bracket didn't do as well in Nick All-Stars as like the general ultimate bracket. You kind of mentioned Dimension earlier, who I believe is a melee Marth player who's very solid, but not quite like, I don't think people view him as like a top contender in melee, quite on the level of like, where people usually place like DeBuzz or Mars in ultimate. So it'll be interesting if we start seeing some of the players who were like in this crew battle in particular, people who are generally considered elite players for the 2 games, enter more brackets. It seems to be leaning a little bit ultimate, but I think, melee players are having a lot of fun with it. You mentioned earlier watching a lot of Mango, watching a lot of IBDW. They're playing a lot. I think the dash dancing implementation will spark or re-spark that interest for some of the people who might have gotten bored with it early on. And yeah, we'll kind of see where it goes from there.
Right. I think the missing piece of the dash dance is, of course, the run speed, like you mentioned. I'm totally on board. If they did that as like a fast little fix, that wouldn't bother me too much. But again, I digress. Yeah, I love that take. It's hard to see exactly where the results are going to lean. One crew battle does not a meta make, but in terms of some of these top players on the melee side, one thing I also noticed is that the S2J, Wizro, Plup, they are multi-Smash, game players. They are not a strictly melee thing. And Zane, Zane got 4-stocked by Void. Zane doesn't play Smash Ultimate, to my knowledge. I don't see Zane playing anything else besides melee. I don't think melee. I think Zane's stream, I think they have a deal with Twitch where if anything other than melee is played, he gets banned. So these players like S2J, a big Smash 64 player, and Wizrobe obviously plays all of them. These are the Smash Masters are being rewarded for their flexibility here, and I think what Ultimate needs to catch up on is the speed of the game. I think it's just straight up a comfortability of that, just things change in a second. You give everything up. This is the situation now. Or, oh, you thought you were comboing someone, you're DIing now. DI. And Ultimate's not slow. It's faster than the other games post melee, but it's not that speed that we find in the 2001 Classic. So I think once we see which players start to dedicate more time to really start absorbing the speed and the cadence of Nick All-Stars, I think once that all comes together, I think it's going to take months, honestly, to really see how this pans out in full, because that's just the timeline for big decisions. When you're talking about these top level players, this is their livelihood. And, it's not just about the tournaments. A lot of the time it's about paying rent. It's about getting Twitch views and subs and, YouTube content, and all of the above is what is going to eventually lead, and how much fun they're having, obviously. And is this something they actually want to dedicate time to? It's really hard to see how much money is going to be put in when it's the first month of the game. But if this keeps up, if Nickelodeon starts saying like, you know what, we're in, like, we're fully on board, let's get our voice acting, let's get some good single player, let's really expand, then there's going to be another conversation about, all right, are you guys ready to quit Ultimate? You've quit your other Smash games. Are you ready to quit that one? That's pretty mean. It's the meanest thing I've ever said. But I think with the Melee players, it's going to be a different conversation entirely, which is, are you ready to have your money game and then your passion game? Because Melee is a money game for 5 people. It's a pocket change for 20. And this, if the results come in and there's real money to be had at these tournaments, the sponsorships are not going to be impeded or scared away by something like Nintendo's actions. We could go on and on about all the reasons why Melee has not been as successful in the financial department. If Nick All-Stars really sticks around as that viable option, and people continue to have fun with it, it's not just a novelty. It's not just the silly game that has SpongeBob and Patrick and blah, blah, blah. It really has legs. And I think both of you and I think it does. Otherwise, we wouldn't be recording this. I think we have a bit of a longer event horizon for things we dedicate our time to. But, that all of that is going to be put into the mix. And maybe we'll get another crew battle in a month or two, but it's going to take time to really see if the Ultimate players come out on top or if it's the Melee heads that reign supreme. But I'm here for it.
And like kind of just touching on what you were talking about, like the speed of the game with Ultimate players catching up. I think it's just the scrappy sort of nature where, like, right, we talk about that in Melee. Oh, I think my camera just dipped out again. But are we back? Yeah. But the like Melee has a lot of those, like, you're trading and there's really close knockdowns, and sometimes you trade with light moves in a really close quarter situation. One person hits the tech, one person doesn't hit the tech, and now someone's advantage, and you're picking up off that. And it's like those little tiny situations, like those micro spacing situations, and barely hitting someone at a shield, and whether you continue pressuring the guard or you put up your own guard to try to catch them attacking out of guard, like that's very Melee-esque compared to Ultimate, where you're kind of like more slowly taking space, I should say, and putting out like strong moves and pressuring the shield. Like when characters trade, it feels like they get kind of reset in neutral. In Melee and in Nick All-Stars, it feels like it's very situational. Like sometimes a trade can be really advantaged for somebody, or sometimes it can be completely flipped and it's better for somebody else, depending on if you hit a tech or where the hit sends you, or what matchup, what percent. And so I think, like, when you see people like naring at each other and one person's guarding and then the situation is flipped, that's more reminiscent of Melee, and I think that's something that Ultimate players have to get used to a little bit more. And the other part too is something that we kind of touched on last week, right? Just in reference to DeBuzz, and you're talking about, like, when do people make that jump to committing to Nick All-Stars as their primary game for money, for like an actual career? And I think it was notable that, not to harp on DeBuzz not making top 8 for Ultimate, but that was, I think, his worst placing of the events. He entered Brawl as well, like for like Super Smash Brothers Brawl, and got like top 3. He got top 8 and stuff in Nick All-Stars, and I think his worst placing was Ultimate. And we were talking a little bit last week about how do people's results get impacted as they spread themselves out across multiple games? This might be an extreme case where, DeBuzz was trying to play, it's his one chance a year to play his old Brawl and go play as Olimer, so he decided to put a little bit more effort into that. This is the first major land major for Nick All-Star, so he really wanted to have a good showing in that, and maybe he didn't quite put all of his focus into Ultimate like he normally would. But how does that transpire moving forward? He's clearly established himself in Nick All-Stars already in the early meta, and it's going to be tough. He's a very prominent name in Ultimate as well, and we'll have to see how players like that keep up with playing multiple games moving forward. I think that's something to just keep an eye on for both Melee and Ultimate players. I think is really interesting.
Oh yeah, it's definitely important to keep in mind that he's also playing Smash Wii U. He was playing Smash 4. So
right. Yeah. There was he was playing Smash 4 too. You're right.
It's an insane performance. And then I just checked. He made 17th in Ultimate, which is certainly under his standards. Again, hopefully this is a SmashCon thing. Like you were mentioning, there's reasons to enter the Brawl, and they're also smaller brackets, so it's like it's tough. I do think that I would agree that Nick All-Stars is worth mentioning as like, okay, it's not just another game piled on. It's a different game. It's a new game. It's a fast game, and it's a longer bracket than the kind of shambles of Brawl and Smash 4. So I do think DeBuzz probably put a lot more brain power and energy towards that All-Star bracket, and then that might have impacted Ultimate. So right, he's probably having some sort of internal dialogue here, trying to figure out where his passion lies. I'm not going to speak for him. I hope he sticks around. I hope he really develops his DeBuzz. His DeBuzz. Yeah, that's how intertwined he is. Dude, we should.
Honestly, Zim is DeBuzz.
Zim is. It's crazy. It's like every move he has is like, all right, yeah. Of course he's gonna love that. We'll see where he takes the character of DeBuzz, and and where it goes towards the meta. But we want every player that comes into this game, which I'm fully embracing. I want everyone to give it an honest shot to really see if it fits with them, and to give it their best foot forward. Also, I can't wait to keep seeing all these Slap City guys do their thing. I'm still becoming acquainted. It's a completely new scene to us, so it's going to take time to familiarize ourselves. But when you're seeing the same people in top 8 doing crazy stuff, it's going to be hard to forget. But it's nice to see the scenes coming together. And look, I'm looking at some of these topics here. I'm on the end of my list. Is there anything you wanted to bring up before we start wrapping things up?
I guess just like kind of moving forward, right? Like I'm excited to see, like you just mentioned, with like Slap City players and just with the scene in general. Like we have a few, right? We're one LAN major down. That's all we have so far is one really significant LAN tournament. Everything else has been online or like very, very small, cozy little like local weekly tournaments. We still have main stage and stuff coming up, which I think is in November, if I'm not mistaken. And then we also have Genesis and stuff in January. And I think by the time we get through, I kind of felt like this was the timeline anyway, but I think we'll have a really clear understanding of where the game and where the meta is headed and what players have really like risen to the upper echelon of the player base. Probably after Genesis, I think we'll have a pretty solid foundation, a pretty clear picture of like where that's all headed, both like in the meta development and also in like what names really stand out. And so I'm just looking forward to like fast, not to fast forward past everything along the way, but just I'm very fascinated on like what everything's gonna look like when we get there. Are we gonna have more, like, is the roster gonna be expanded by then? It sounds like it is from the way that they've talked about it. By the time we get to Genesis, we're probably gonna have characters that aren't even in the game yet for that bracket, and I think that's all really fascinating. And as they continue to tweak things, where that's all headed is awesome. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited too. I mean, it is. I was trying to think back. You know, you hear things and you go through your memory bank to relate to it. And I'm like, when was the last time I was excited about a new character in a game I was playing? Never was I excited about a new character. I mean, I guess I did play a good amount on MOBAs, so those, you know, that's different. But never been into a fighting game. Melee didn't have new characters. What are you doing? You know, maybe when I unlocked them for the first time as a kid, was I excited to play Game and Watch and all that. But regarding going forward in these tournaments, I have it right here. The main stage is on the 12th of November next month.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, Genesis is January 28th. So definitely going to be looking at that and all, everything leading up to it. Here's the final topic, and I didn't have it written down because I was just thinking about it so much. Nintendo Switch is currently completely unpatched to my knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
That is a huge problem because, and I know you know this, but I'll say it for our listeners, tournaments are running on Switch, and I have not heard a peep about plans to change that. I'm sure TOs are having the conversation. I'm not the first one to ring this bell. This is an existential issue for TOs and venues and tournament series. Everything relies on the version of the game you're running to be the same version people have been practicing on, especially with these prize pools. So, I mean, to be a little solution oriented, there needs to either be a direct line to Nintendo that is expediting or at least keeping on track these patches. I saw today, and this is unsubstantiated, but PlayStation and Xbox have a lead time of a day and 3 days from what I've seen to get the patches, which is totally reasonable.
Yep.
After PC, it's a 9-day, 10 days, I guess now since the other patch, and so now, you have to think the worst. This is Nintendo. Are they sabotaging this game because it's competition? I wouldn't put it past them. But that's one side, is you get someone, you get a rep, you get someone with a title and money behind them to step up and say, Nintendo, you have to make sure these patches are in. Or our generally grassroots scene figures out a PC solution, or God forbid a PlayStation solution to these games where we have no other reason to carry that. Like, we run it on a Switch because we have Switches and we don't have a lot of money. So what do we do?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a concern. I know that there were some like settings issues on the Switch version. For example, something that they repeatedly were talking about on stream is that on the Switch version, now this is something that I think could just be patched out whenever they actually approve the patch, but there's an issue where when you're customizing your controls on the character select screen on Switch, and I don't know if this is the same on other consoles, I just know that this works on Switch in particular, that when you play the match, right, each player sets their own controls. They can be different. You go into a match, and then after the match, you go back to the character select screen for rechoosing the characters, counter picks, etc. The person who last confirmed their controls the previous time you were on their character select screen, it makes all of the players have that button layout. And so players had to reset up their button layout between every game in a set. And that slows down the game a lot. It sounds like, it's going to take them 10 or 15 or 20 seconds to do it. But what happens is players forget, and maybe, so what happened a bunch of times is people would jump into a match, they'd have like one quick neutral exchange, and then they're like, oh, I didn't change my controls back. And the players were being very nice, gentlemening to quit out and not, penalize anybody, and they'd reset up the controls. It builds up, you get from a 10 or 15 seconds little waiting period every time you have to change the controls. If anyone messes that up, it probably gets closer to a minute. That builds up every set. That builds up, in top 8s, in top 32s, and top 64s. Brackets have to run on time, and that's a pretty notable issue. The loading time seemed pretty bad as far as like, even after people selected their characters and you're waiting for them to move into the match, the loading times are longer than they are on PC. 100% are longer, and like all of those things add up from like a TO's perspective. That's a concern. But obviously, the price point for either purchasing PCs that you just own and run the bracket off of, or that you rent. I think was it Gaming Generations? I think is a pretty common vendor for that people will go to rent consoles and stuff for Smash events. Rent Switches, rent GameCubes, rent Wii's, all that kind of stuff, adapters. I'm not super familiar with their inventory. I assume that they probably have PCs and stuff that you can rent out as well. I've heard people talk about, from SmashCon's perspective, right? That's a grassroots event, largely run by VG Bootcamp. They're gonna basically just take, their inventory is mostly Nintendo stuff. They're gonna have a lot of Switches. I can understand for certain grassroots events, that own all of their own consoles, that they probably are just gonna use whatever inventory they have, and that might be an exception. For stuff like Genesis, that I think goes through other vendors and stuff, a little bit larger events, there's got to be a consideration, I think, for trying to put the extra money into getting PCs. How cooperative is Nickelodeon in working with these events? Can they throw them a bone and be like, we'll help you get like PCs and stuff, so that way you can run the Steam version. Controllers are an issue, right? On Switch, like, it's an extra difficulty. There's going to be people who play this game on keyboard, 100%. With the digital inputs and stuff, you don't need a control stick to be able to play the game. So like, getting a keyboard hooked up to a Switch is not nearly as easy as it is for a GameCube controller to just plug into the Steam version. For like, those are all sorts of issues, I think, that are going to come about, that are going to have to be addressed as we move forward here. And just as the last point before I throw it back to you, you mentioned the weight on the patches, obviously a huge issue. And Nintendo is always kind of just like looming as this entity that they don't like to see competition to their games. They don't like to see competitive scenes develop. If Nickelodeon starts to threaten the livelihood of Ultimate, of Smash at all, like, and really challenges it as like a prominent game in the platform fighter genre, does Nintendo start getting bitter and saying, like, this is something I've thought about previously. I don't even think that's necessarily likely, but it's a concern. It's a thought that, like, does Nintendo start turning to these grassroots events and being like, you can't stream Melee, you can't stream Smash if you're also hosting a Nickelodeon bracket? Like, they've already done that to like PM, and obviously that's a little bit different because it's, a mod of their game. But how bitter does Nintendo get, and how much do they come after the scene here and really try to make things difficult? All of those things make, the Switch version even more concerning, especially with this huge delay in patches. But
that didn't come through on the mic, don't worry.
But that's really the issue here, is like, I don't know what we do moving forward. Nintendo is a concern, Switch is a concern. Yeah, I don't know if you have any thoughts on those things.
Yeah, dude.
It's kind of
it's so demoralizing to know that we are still kind of in this abusive relationship with a terrible company that makes great games. Because, like, yeah, we're using the Switch because we have it. If the last platform fighter was on the PlayStation, this wouldn't be an issue. It just, we'd have no reason to even look at the Switch. We'd be like, okay, yeah, I guess all the casuals can play their games. Who cares? But no, this is what we've got. And so, yeah, the thing is, it's going to be very instinctive for TOs, I think, to kind of, okay, here's my squad, here's my ragtag team of 12, and we're going to figure this out. We're going to, raise the money. We're going to crowdsource. We're going to host a local so that the funds from the venue fee build up towards a $300 PC emulator. Like, that's going to be, I think, an instinct. But I do think that, I don't know if I've said this, I think I tweeted about it a couple days ago, last week, where I think it's really important for our scenes to start throwing our weight around is one way to put it, but really to start doing some professional level communication and almost lobbying. Like, get the people that make the decisions, get not developers really, but the people who platform the game, the Nickelodeon reps, really start figuring out how to influence this company to use money that they certainly have, and to convince them that we are a scene. And my dog is taking my my weight, my wins for my sails here, but we need to understand that if we contact the right people, if we send the emails, make the calls, and really prove that we are a dedicated group of people that care about what we're doing and we don't want to be under Daddy Nintendo's thumb anymore, we can probably figure something out. We don't need to take our limited resources to figure this out, because we're just an amalgamation of different platform fighting scenes right now. There's no day one. There's no Doc Kid in the Nick game. There's no one who's starting with this game that's maybe there is, but not really. It's like you start from being a casual smasher at this point, maybe in a year or two, but now's the time to at least support with your tweets, support with your thumbs, keep an eye out. Like, it's early on, but this is definitely an issue. I love the phrase looming presence, looming threat, because Nintendo knows how to exert influence in the pressure points, and we've seen them take down PM, which I really should, I think most Melee players really, respected the PM scene, and a lot of us liked the game. We might not have, fell in love with it, but I was introduced to Melee through PM, and we've seen such a strong, thriving community get completely decimated by Nintendo's just, I don't know, their business acumen. It's frustrating, it's awful, and we're traumatized enough to want to get ahead of it. That's all we're saying. Let's get ahead of this.
Yeah, when I talk about I'm like, it's not even likely, but we're just so traumatized as a community that I'm just like, it's like being it's literally just, I think probably at a point just being paranoid of like what Nintendo decides to do, their knee-jerk reaction to seeing other competitive platform fighters succeed. And you kind of talked about it. The devs, I think, the people who actually have their hands in making the game, I think they recognize the opportunity and what they have in front of them. I hope that Nickelodeon, as you said, I hope that they recognize what kind of opportunity this is, and they work to capitalize. Like, this is a new game that has a lot of momentum behind it. The devs that they hired, to their credit, have a lot of goodwill from the community right now. I think that people generally feel really good about who they put in charge of making the game, of balancing the game, of updating the game. This is a chance for them to run with it, and I hope that they recognize that, and I hope that they do it. Like, it's a perfect storm, I think, for them to really carry this momentum forward into making something special. Like, honestly, I really think that that's where this game could be headed.
Okay, so I want to give a Thaddeus Cruz Twitter shout out of the week. So he tweeted out highlights for the upcoming patch. He actually tweeted the patch itself. Apologies. And one of the players, Ultima Shadow, snapshots the Oblina down arrow hitbox nerf, like a gigantic nerf. You mentioned it earlier. It's like they cut 15 frames off. It's like a 600% nerf or something. It's like, it's just the most absurd thing ever. And someone, Ultima clips it and goes, no, and Thaddeus just comments, owned LMAO. Completely ratios him.
Absolute savage.
It was awesome. So this is someone who I think just slots in, just feels like one of the, just like a player, just feels like one of us. And so I'm going to keep an eye on this Twitter. Who knows? I might do a fun, stupid, I'm trying to do some more videos, just dumb short form stuff. I might do a Thaddeus Twitter review, but
best hits.
Yeah, everything's a best hit. So I got to really trim it down. But yeah, I mean, look, bottom line, still super engaged by everything going on. I haven't been able to even play that much, and I'm getting just a lot of enjoyment out of following everything that's going on. Yeah, I've just been really enjoying it, and I've been enjoying this. This is something I look forward to. We went past an hour and change, and so this has been a lot of fun, man.
Yeah, it's been great. I'm looking forward to doing more, hopefully. So
hopefully next week, baby, same time.
Yeah.
We got it. Well, this was your week 2 review. Thank you everyone for watching, and we'll be back shortly.